What's going on, everyone? My name is Gothix. Welcome back to another episode of Subtweet THIS. We have another amazing episode for you today, and we are joined by Zuby, the one and only rapper, entrepreneur, podcaster. There's a bunch of things on there. I could keep going. Zuby, how are you doing today? Thank you so much for joining us on the show.
Yeah, happy to be here. I'm blessed as always. Always good. I try not to complain too much.
Awesome. So we have been wanting to have you on the show for a while because as we were discussing before we started recording, we've at least me and Saul have had kind of a political awakening, as in the past few months, and immediately following that, we were on social media trying to find other Black people that kind of think or have the same mindset as us, because it's so rare to find, as cliche as it is, free thinkers. And so, well, actually, maybe you want to lead with that first question that you had about the DM that you sent him, because maybe we can tackle off of that.
Yeah. So I remember I actually slid in your DMs a while ago when this all happened. And I remember I talked about that just because of kind of like our political awakening, like now we're just more in the middle, because both of our families lean very hard Democrat. And when we started having this new way of thinking, that this new viewpoint, that we were losing friends left and right. And I remember I asked you a message like, is this something that you ever dealt with? And how did you deal with it? And you told me that you've always been like this, that you've always had these opinions. So I remember my question with this is, at what point did your opinions become problematic? Because you've always had them. So what was that point?
That's a funny question. I mean, firstly, I don't really think my opinions are problematic. I think it's in the weird echo chamber of an echo chamber that is Twitter and perhaps wider social media. And with the way that the world has shifted over the past decade in particular, I think that combined with me just gaining a much bigger audience and much bigger presence, and also myself becoming more outspoken about things I used to talk about in private, and everyone in my friends and family were totally aware of my views and opinions on various things. But I used to keep that off Twitter, especially as a musician. I thought, let me not rock the boat. Let me not polarize people. Let me not put out anything that could, offend certain people or whatever. And then I just reached a stage as time has gone on and I've gotten older and I've become more successful, where I just started caring less and less about that. And things started shifting in such a peculiar direction on various aspects that I felt morally and ethically compelled to start speaking publicly about some various things. And it turned out that when I did that, that was when my sort of audience growth and trajectory on social media sort of hockey sticked upwards. I mean, I've been on all these platforms for a decade plus. And then in 2019, when I started to become 2019, started to become a bit more vocal about this stuff. And my audience just grew very significantly. The amount of people I'm from the UK, I'm an independent rapper from the south of England. But the amount of people who know me now in the USA, all over the world now, is just insane. Any city I go to, UK, US, wherever, I get stopped, people recognize me. And when that used to happen, it used to always be because of my music, but now it's for everything. I'll get people stopping me saying, "Hi, I saw you on the Candace Owens show. I saw you on Ben Shapiro. I saw you on Joe Rogan. I saw you on this. I saw you on that. I heard this song." And so it's really grown, and the demographic is so wide now. I'll get stopped by a 60-year-old white English guy in town here. And then I'll be in the States, and I'm in Atlanta. I went to A3C Hip Hop Festival in 2019, and I had people there who'd seen me on Joe Rogan. I had people there who'd seen me on Ben Shapiro, a lot of people who'd seen me on Candace Owens, etc. So it's just really, really interesting to see how far that spreads, and also how many people were like, "Yo, keep doing, like, I love what you're doing. Keep talking." And that really goes across all different demographics, age groups, races, ethnicities, just all over. Even people who don't necessarily even agree with a lot of my stuff, they still are like, "Yo, I love that. I don't agree with everything you say, but I love the fact that you say it, and you're bold and you're courageous, and you make sense, right? You're not just trying to sort of be a firebrand and antagonize everybody, but you're saying something and then actually are willing to have the conversation." I'm always open to conversation, debate, challenge, agree, disagree, whatever. I love conversation, and I think we need more of it.
Oh, totally. I totally agree with you. And so I'm curious, when you started getting approached in public and people started recognizing you, did it catch you off guard? Were you ever like, whoa, this is weird, somebody recognizes me online? Because it recently happened to me with one person,
Mm.
and my brain immediately started processing, is this person a threat? Like, I'm trying to figure it out. So has it like been okay for you as far as that goes?
It's been totally fine because honestly, it's been happening to some degree since 2006.
Oh,
I mean,
wow.
I put out my first album 15 years ago. So, I'm about to put out my sixth album. So here in the UK, I've always had, not always, sorry, like since I started doing music and having music videos out and a couple songs playing on radio and stuff and doing gigs, touring, etc. I mean, I used to be out hustling, promoting my music all the time, for years on end in different cities. So I've had, I already had, thousands and thousands of people know who I am, and that would happen from time to time. It's just that the volume has gone up, and how widespread it is. It used to be, primarily teenagers and young adults who just know me through my music, and just in a handful of cities in the UK. Whereas now it's people of all ages, and I went to the States, spent 11 weeks in the States in 2019, and I was in all these places I'd never been to before, new states, new cities, whatever. And in every single city, I got recognized like multiple times again by just a real diverse group of people. So it's cool, but that's great. I'm not someone who sort of cares about fame or celebrity for the sake of it, but I want to impact a lot of people in a positive way in some shape or form through my music, my writing, my art, my social media, etc. So for me, it's a great thing when that happens, because it's like, okay, cool. It's one thing seeing numbers going up on these platforms and saying, oh, wow, I got, 300, 380,000 Twitter followers. I got, 110,000 Instagram. But when you actually meet people in the real world, when you see people in the real world, it sort of hits that much harder, because it puts a face to it. It's not just numbers. It's like, okay, cool. Like people are really paying attention to what I'm doing here.
Yeah, you're making an impact.
Yeah.
Okay, dope. So you got started with music? Was that like the first part of your entrepreneurship journey?
Yeah. I mean, unless you want to go back to my teenage years when I was like running import export from like UK, from Saudi Arabia to the UK during my boarding school years,
Oh,
selling like watches and Timberland boots and stuff like that. I've always had an entrepreneurial streak. My friends actually find it funny, because those who have known me for a really long time remember that even in school, I was like always selling stuff in school and whatever. But in the way it is now, yeah, it all started with music. Released my first album when I was still in university, and sold a couple thousand copies of that off my own back. And that was the spark for it. I've now been, after university, I released a second album, did music full time for 1 year. Then I moved to London. I worked in the corporate world, actually as a management consultant for 3 years, worked for quite a lot of big companies there. And then November 2011, I took the big leap. I left my corporate job, and I've been self-employed now for almost 10 years.
that's a dope.
Oh,
That's
that's what's
dope.
up.
We're
Thank
so
you.
that is a leap that I find a lot of people are afraid to do, and it's one
Mm.
that I had to hype myself up to do, because I was very miserable working in corporate America. Uh, do you have any advice for someone that is trying to take that leap?
Yeah, quite a bit actually. So I don't recommend people making a leap that's going to put them back on ground zero, right? So in my case, by the time I went full time with my music, I already had two albums and one EP out there. I already had a following. I'd already done two UK tours. I had thousands of social media followers, etc., and I was already making money from my music. So I would recommend to make sure you're already doing what it is you want to be doing, and you're already earning an income from it.
Mhm.
And then when that is coming up, then you can sort of make that leap. So if you imagine, if you're jumping from platform to platform, you don't want to sort of jump from here right down to the ground. But if this one is coming up, and then when it's, there, you can make that jump. So that's one thing I recommend. And then also, be honest with yourself. Be very, very honest with yourself about what you're doing. Make sure it's not simply a delusion, because it's one thing to have an idea or have a dream, but it's another thing to run a business. It's another thing to think about making money, being self-employed. Doing music as a hobby is very, very different to doing music as a career. Totally different mindset. So many different things you have to think about. And so make sure you actually want to do it. There's nothing wrong with doing something as a hobby, Not everything does have to be a full-time job. And then with the last thing, with that said, you want to, it should almost be like you feel like you have to do it. Does that make sense? Right?
Yeah.
Like if there's that much fear and trepidation, etc., then maybe you're not built for it. Maybe it's not the right thing, or maybe it's not the right time. And that's okay. You have to be very, very honest with yourself. In my case, it was not a hard decision at all. It wasn't a hard decision at all. I was like, January 2011, I was like, okay, by the end of this year, I'm going to be a full-time musician, period. Done. No debate. It was in my head. It was like, I want to get a promotion. And then once I've got a promotion, I'm going to go I'm going to buy a van. I'm going to put my name on it. It's going to be purple, and I'm going to drive it all around the country, and I'm going to promote and sell my music. And that is exactly what I've done. And it's exactly what I did. But in my case, it wasn't a hard decision at all. It was like, in my heart of hearts, I knew what I wanted to be doing. And it was just a matter of pulling the trigger.
It's fascinating because with your advice and your explanation right there, I didn't hear anything about the white man holding you back. That's
weird, man. God bless all the white men who have freaking helped me, man. The amount of white men who have helped me in my life. Good grief. That's a billion times as many who has ever even tried to hold me down. No, man, I that's moot to me, man. If it weren't for white people, I wouldn't have a career, period. Let's be real here. Let's be honest. And I don't think I'm reverse. I don't think that's the only rapper who that's true for either.
That's damn right.
Yeah. Let's be real. Let's be real.
Admit it, but they don't damn.
Let's be real, man. Come on.
So actually that might be able to lead me into this question over here, because you did mention you went to Oxford, and was it like a month or 2 months ago? I'm not sure. There was something, some news out of Oxford where some professors were proposing that sheet music be banned because it had racist ties to slavery or something like that. Your eyes are bugging right now.
I didn't hear this one.
Yeah. So there are some articles coming out debunking this, that, these professors never said this. But in any case, I have been noticing a lot of rhetoric where racism is kind of found in all aspects of media and entertainment and things like that. So I want to know, how do you feel about this constant performative activism that we're seeing, where everything from a syrup bottle to something in Dr. Seuss is racist? What do you feel about this environment we're living in?
Man, I feel a lot. I don't even know where to begin. On the biggest level, I'll be real, and I don't actually think I've ever explained it this way. The thing that actually annoys me the most about all of this stuff is it's a gigantic distraction from what actually matters. That's actually the thing that irritates me the most out of all this nonsense, when it's like, outrage over this, over outrage over, and then this sort of false outrage creates reactionary outrage, right? So nobody was bothered by Aunt Jemima pancake syrup, right? You guys are the Black Americans. Let me not speak for you, but I assume that Black Americans were not, deeply upset over Aunt Jemima pancake syrup having a Black woman on it. In fact, I think quite the opposite from what I gathered. I never saw any sort of outrage about that. I think that was totally manufactured. But then by them doing that, it then creates this reactionary sort of outrage to the false outrage. Whereas now people like myself and perhaps like yourself are like, oh my gosh, like, what are they doing? Why are they canceling Aunt Jemima? Why are they doing this? Why are they doing that? And it's all a huge distraction from things that are legitimately important. There are genuinely important things going on in all of our countries, around the world, etc. Whether, regardless of someone's political orientation, actually, there are a lot of issues that 90% plus of people actually agree on, right? Why don't we do something about human trafficking? Why don't we do something about like child abuse? Let's do something about poverty. Let's do something about right? There's all these things that do matter. What about, corruption going on in the government, corruption in the media, the fact that we've been had our rights stripped from us and been locked at home across the world for the past 14 months. Like, how can we talk about this, right? And so all of this manufactured outrage, whether it's Mr. Potato Head or it's there's been so many silly ones. Paw Patrol, Aunt Jemima. There was another Ben. Uncle Ben's Uncle, right? Like all of this stuff where it's like it sort of comes out of thin air. again, I'm not in the States, but I've never, I know a lot of Black Americans. I've never had anyone, I've never come across anyone who was like, man, like this Uncle Ben guy, like we need to remove this. We need to remove all the Black representation from food items, right? Like, and it's also very hypocritical, of course, because on one hand, people are saying, hey, we want more representation. And then it's like, okay, so let's like cancel all of these, let's cancel all of these people who are actually, I don't know, but
right.
Again, it's a distraction, and this shows how effective it is, right? The fact that it's even part of this conversation now, right? So people then get caught up in this, and there's all this back and forth, and all the bad stuff that's actually going on, it kind of keeps on going on because people then get lost in the weeds of all of this other nonsense. And I do genuinely think with so many things, so many issues, people get caught in the weeds. People get emotional and they get caught in the weeds, and the focus is always on the division and the differences rather than the things that people actually agree on. Whether someone is like, I'm someone who, I don't really like to label myself politically, but I guess literally from my childhood, I guess you could always say I've been on the political right. Like I'm not someone who's shifted. It's always been what makes sense to me. Even before I was thinking about politics, I guess if you polled me on different things, I would have come more conservative kind of leaning. And as I've gotten older, I've become more libertarian. But it's just like, divide and conquer has always been a way to manipulate and dominate people. Always. Black versus white, men versus women, straight versus LGBT, XYZ. Now you have maskers versus non-maskers, people who want to take the vax versus people who don't, pro lockdown people versus anti-lock, like everything. It's always just division. And people get caught up in the weeds. To give a great example, actually, especially pertinent over the past year is, this whole debate between, not talking about the organization here, because that's a different thing, the whole Black Lives Matter thing. And people are getting caught up in Black Lives Matter versus All Lives Matter, right? Like just the statements. And, people are having huge debates about, this person says All Lives Matter. This person gets angry and says, no, Black Lives Matter. This person says, yeah, Black Lives Matter, but All Lives Matter. And they're literally arguing about this in semantics.
Yeah.
It's like, you're saying the same thing.
Right.
Right. No, nobody disagrees. Nobody disagrees that Black Lives Matter as a statement, right? Nobody disagrees. And nobody disagrees with the statement, all lives matter, right? Like, unless you're a psychopath.
Well, some people do disagree with it.
Yeah. Maybe a tiny percentage, but generally everyone agrees with that. Republican, Democrat, liberal, centrist, conservative, everyone's like, yeah, we don't want like people dying, like people getting killed, regardless of their skin color. Like you don't want innocent people getting killed, period.
Right.
We all agree. Cool.
Agreed.
Police brutality is a bad thing. Nobody wants police brutality, right? I'm not seeing people out there like saying, yeah, we want more police brutality, or people like, yeah, we want more racism, or yeah, we want more. No one is saying that. So that's going on, but people are almost acting as if people are. And so there's all this arguing on the semantics. And I'm kind of like looking from a distance, and I'm kind of like, you guys are actually saying the same thing. Like you think you're opponents. It's been framed as if you're opposition, but you're not. Now you might have different ideas about the best way about the severity of the problem, or the degree to what causes it, or what some of the solutions could be, etc. But actually at the core, everybody wants less police brutality. Everybody wants less racism. Everybody wants less innocent people dying and being harmed, and so on and so forth. So if people can kind of like chill out for a second on the emotions and have those conversations, then they'll realize, okay, maybe this person prefers to say it this way. This person prefers to say it that way. But there's a lot more in common than there is in division. And so I try to, speak to everybody and try to just be real on these things, just be real, be genuine, be honest. And I do my best not to, like, I have my own biases and my own leanings, of course, but I try not to be like so partisan that it becomes a stage where I'm, just trying to fight for a certain team, or I'm being dishonest in what I'm saying, or I'm outright denying certain facts because they don't fit my agenda, so on and so forth. And I think if more people could do that and adopt that, then actually the temperature would just come down quite a lot, and people would actually find some solutions rather than just arguing in circles all the time.
Yeah, I used to with me, at least now, I totally agree when it comes to the emotional aspect. I feel like it's just been exacerbated, especially with the lockdowns.
Yes.
And it's just done nothing but the worst. That kind of like segues into what I want to talk about in regards to that, because I know that that behavior is definitely what's with the shift in culture that we've been seeing, especially a lot more now. And I know that you know, with you being an advocate for like physical fitness and health, why do you think in the beginning of COVID, when there was no vaccine, that there wasn't a push how to strengthen people's immune system? You talked about, you know, with people being more emotional. I I I only think of that with people having, you know, vitamin D deficiency, which would definitely
Mm.
help out with that because you're stuck inside, you're not getting sunlight. With you not taking magnesium, which will also help out your mood. So it's just these things that could help to counter that. Why do you think in the beginning that wasn't advertised? Instead, be in your house, maybe even wear a mask in your house as well.
Yeah. Honestly, this goes back decades, and this is that the government doesn't care about you more than you do. And these things shouldn't necessarily, your health is your responsibility. This goes way back, way before COVID. I mean, remember the remember the food pyramid?
Yeah. Oh,
Like,
yeah.
right? Like, having like have 12 servings of carbs and grains, and just like a little bit of meat and a little bit. That the whole thing was backwards. But the truth there, I think there's multiple things. I think number one, the government does not and never has truly cared about people's health and well-being, right? I don't know how many examples we need to go through for that to get through to people. And this is just the nature of government. And when I say government, I'm not even talking about every single individual person in the government, right? I do think that there are politicians out there. I do know people who are politicians personally, and I think most people mean well, but I just think the nature of government and even the role of government and the scope of what I think the government should be, that's not even its job as far as I'm concerned. I think if it's going to be exist and be as big as it is, then of course they should be at least be doing that as a minimum. But honestly, it comes back to the personal responsibility thing for me. And I can only control what I eat. I can only exercise for myself. I can only like sleep as many hours as I sleep, drink as much water as I like. All of these things are totally down to the individual. Um, and so I think it's twofold in terms of why they didn't do it. I think number one, um, yeah, they just don't really care. Like, you being healthy is not really a top priority. And also, you've got links with, I don't know all the ins and outs of it, but you've got the links with big pharma and certain food elements of the food industry, et cetera. And so actually, if Americans got really, really fit and healthy across the board, then that's kind of bad for business for a lot of people, right? It's not good for certain people's business interests, right? There's a multi-billion, if not trillion-dollar industry reliant on people being fat, people being sick, even people, not being particularly financially literate, and so on and so forth. So my view, and part of why I lean libertarian in the way that I do, is just a general distrust of the government. I think that the government sucks at most things apart from collecting money and pointing guns at people. If you want money collected or you want guns aimed at people, government is fantastic for that. Anything else, education, healthcare, advice on this kind of policy, all this kind of stuff, like, I just do not trust that the government is going to make better decisions than most people do. I care about my health more than the government does. I care about my family's health more than the government does, et cetera. So it makes more sense to me to do those things individually, right? Not to constantly be looking towards the government. And then secondfold, I think the other one comes to another interesting cultural aspect, which is that people prefer, how would I say it? Number one, people are like averse to just things that are difficult, right? People take the path of least resistance. Why is obesity such a big problem? It's because it's easier to just eat junk food and not exercise than it is to watch what you eat and eat nutritious food and to exercise. That's what it is. It's not that complicated. Most human beings will take the path of least resistance in virtually everything. It takes a certain mindset to be like, okay, you know what? I don't just want to be average. I don't want to just be mediocre in whatever it is. I'm going to do the work to improve myself in this regard. And then also, I think because obesity is this taboo topic, right? It's this taboo topic where you've got the whole body positivity movement and people are calling everything fat shaming, etc. It's like obesity is one of those topics where it's really hard for people to just be like frank and honest about because it hurts people's feelings, right? And we live in a time where people's feelings is more important than facts. And when it comes to something like health, and it comes to life and death, and it comes to illness and sickness, this is where you need to keep it real, right? I mean, we already know, besides age, what is the biggest comorbidity for this virus? We've known for over a year obesity, right? Look around the world. How come not a single country in Africa has been hit hard by this virus? Not one. The one that's been hardest hit is the one with the highest obesity rate, South Africa, right? But across the board, they've all fared well. It's not because of governmental policies. It's not because they've done some magic thing. It's not because they have amazing healthcare systems. It's because people are generally young and are, at a healthy body weight. Why has the UK been hit hard? High obesity rate. Why has the USA been hit hard? High obesity rate. I think something like 80% of the people hospitalized have been overweight or obese. And so just me saying that like triggers some people. And I'm just like, that's just a fact. This isn't not me casting a moral judgment on somebody. And it's weird because people don't view it like that when it comes to, say, I don't know, someone being a smoker or someone being a drug user, et cetera. We all acknowledge, okay, like if you're a smoker, you're putting yourself at higher risk of certain types of cancer and certain types of diseases. And, you're creating comorbidities for other things. If you're a drug user, you're creating these potential problems for yourself, et cetera. We do recognize it with other areas. But I think over the past couple of decades, it's become so politically correct. A lot of things have become so politically correct that they've actually become very, very destructive and dangerous. There's a difference between being polite and just lying to people. Lying always has consequences, especially on a large scale. So I think that's why I think that was quite a long-winded answer, touching on a lot of things, but I think that's why they didn't put that information out there. That's what I think anyway.
No, that's actually perfect that you said that, because recently, right now, I just actually started reading your book, Strong Advice.
Okay, nice.
And one of the first things to always bring up before getting in shape that you talk about is the motivation and mindset. Mm-hmm. And one of the first things that you do mention is the loser mindset versus the winner mindset. And some of the things that you listed, problem focused versus solution focused, compares to others versus compares to previous self, and blame others versus take responsibility. Do you think in today's society, after interacting with people on Twitter, that the loser mindset is being pushed more? People can't take that hard facts, especially when you bring up obesity. Instead, they just replace it with like, no, that's body positivity to appeal to people's feelings.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think it's a big problem, I think, in modern Western society. Political correctness, this might sound hyperbolic, but political correctness can kill people, and it does kill people, right? Because it prevents solutions from being found, because you're not even allowed to talk about certain topics honestly. Or if you do, right, you get attacked, and it takes a certain type of personality and character to deal with all these attacks and insults and whatever. I don't particularly enjoy being called names by random strangers online, or having my inbox and mentions being flooded by people who are yelling at me and calling me names and whatever. And, a lot of people can't. Fortunately, I have a personality type where I can deal with that, and most of it just rolls off of me. But a lot of people don't. And so they don't want to step into that fray. But when it comes to a lot of issues, man, even if you're talking about like violence, violence in certain areas and certain communities, or certain problems that exist within certain areas or countries or cities or whatever it is, it's so hard. Like, nobody wants to just be real about it. Nobody wants to be honest because they're afraid of harming people, right? So if you want to talk about, okay, in the UK, there's a knife crime problem. In the USA, there's also a knife crime problem, but there's a gun crime problem, right? There are certain issues and certain patterns and certain problems, and people get so emotional about them that they don't want to talk about some of the elephants in the room, right? So if you're looking at some of this violence that's happening in certain areas of the UK, certain areas of the USA, et cetera, there are certain patterns that are happening, right? Most people don't even want to just like even accept that, okay, like, it's totally cool to, if it's very trendy, if a police officer, a white police officer, kills a black person. It happens way more in the USA than it does in the UK. But if it happens, then we know the level of the response. Okay. But if like, you know, a black person, like 1,000 black people are killed by other black people, it's kind of quiet. That doesn't generate as much outrage as that one other single one. Like I recognize the policeman as an agent of state. This is one of my big criticisms of the Black Lives Matter as a movement, because I'm like, why are you focusing on 0.0, I don't know, say 0.01% of the issue? So if there are like, you know, in a given year, I'm going to take these stats aren't like totally wrong, but I'm going to like, I don't know them off the top of my head exactly, but let's say in a single year, you may have, say, 20 unarmed black people killed by police officers in the entire USA, 330 million people, right? And then you might have 5,000 black people killed by other black people. All of the focus is on the former and not the latter. But I'm like, hey, wait, isn't this thing called Black Lives Matter? I agree with that statement. We all agree with that statement. So why is all the focus on that? Like, we should even be talking about obesity, right? We should be talking, what's the biggest killer of Black Americans? I believe it's heart disease, I think.
Yeah.
Cancer or heart disease, right? Mm-hmm. So why aren't we talking about that, right? Let's talk about diet. Let's talk about exercise. Let's talk about crime in communities. Let's talk about fatherless homes. Let's talk about all of these different factors. But it's like people get really jacked up when you bring those up, even though those are the things that you actually need to discuss and remedy. Because if you can't even talk about them, right? If you can't even talk about fatherlessness, not just amongst Black people, by the way, like just in general in society, if you can't talk about that because people deem it as like an attack, say it's an attack on single mothers, or it's an attack on, everything's viewed as an attack. And I'm like, this is not an attack. We're just saying like, yo, okay, look at these trends. Look at these trends. Look at this situation. Look at these percentages. So what's going on here? Like, why is this happening? Let's look at the root of the problem. People want to talk about, people are talking about like how many bullets are allowed in a magazine, or what sort of gun this is, or what, like in the UK, people are talking about, oh, maybe you should ban knives past a certain length, or you should make it a little, like, we all have knives. We've all got kitchens. All of us have knives, right? Knives don't jump out and start stabbing people by themselves. The problem isn't access to knives, because we have knives. In the USA, you have more guns than people, but 99.9% of people who own a gun have never murdered anybody. So the problem isn't simply the tool, but they just want to focus on all these things rather than looking at the core, because the real true problem, the core of all this stuff, if you're talking about violent crime, the core is somebody wants to cause physical harm to another human being, and then they're going out and doing that. So that's a much harder problem to solve, but that's what it is. Because the truth is, if you want to do harm to somebody, we all have lots of tools at our disposal to be able to do so. Like we all do. I mean, you got fists to begin with, right? But you got vehicles, right? You got vehicles, you got knives, you've got baseball bats, you've got all kinds of weapons. Even here in the UK, where it's no harder to get a gun, you've still got access to all sorts of weapons. So it's not, the problem is, okay, why are there people in society who reach a level where they want to even go out and do that? What's happened in that person's life? How were they raised? What happened? Like, what can we do as a society to better that? But to me, that's like the real conversation. But again, people are getting distracted with trying to sort of deal with the just stuff that doesn't matter, you know, like, right. I do keep an eye on the US, and, I see them talking about, gun control this, and we need to do this and I'm just like, that's not going to do anything, man. Like, it's not going to do anything. And if you even look at the patterns of the gun crime, the places that already have the tightest restrictions have the most violent, have the most gun crime. So the correlation isn't even what someone may think it is. You may think, okay, the tighter the restrictions, the less gun crime you're going to get. But you look and you see, okay, it's actually the opposite. So to me, as a rational, critical thinker, you're like, okay, well, it's clearly not that simple, right? It's more multifaceted than that. Just like we've been having this whole virus thing going on for more than a year now, and you've seen there's no correlation between the mask mandates and the lockdowns and the numbers of deaths per 100,000 or per million, right? There's no correlation, but people are just want to run like, no, we need more lockdowns. We need more lockdowns. We need 2 masks now. We need all, and it's just like, why aren't we just having this honest conversation of like, okay, wait, hang on. We've got all this data now from like 100 and something different countries. You've got data from all 50 states in the US, over 1 year's worth of data. Texas just opened up, as we record this, Texas opened up maybe 5 weeks ago or so.
Yeah.
Remember, everyone was freaking out about Texas opening up. They're going to be a spot. What's happened? The cases have gone down, the deaths have gone down, and they're fully open, no restrictions. But instead of looking at that and going, okay, maybe other states should do the same thing, they're still just running down this road of, no, we're going to keep going with doing the wrong thing. And I don't know, man, it's, there's just a lot of dishonesty going on. And so with what I do and with what I try to encourage people to do when I'm, doing these interviews or I'm on social media, et cetera, is just to have these conversations and to be honest and to try to seek the truth. I mean, I think I'm just someone who tries to seek the truth. Whether it confirms what I already believe or it challenges it, or it outright proves it wrong. I just think we always need to be asking questions and digging deeper, whatever. And in a perfect world, journalists and the media would be doing that. But as we know, a lot of journalists, a lot of the media now, they're essentially propaganda outlets, and they are, they're activists. They're not simply objective journalists, et cetera. So it's very hard to even get that kind of straight up information. All these questions I ask, I'm like, hey, these are questions journalists should be asking, right? They should be the ones asking these questions and pushing these issues, et cetera. But we're in a stage where, I think it's down to people like us and down to anyone with a platform, et cetera, to challenge the narrative and ask questions, especially obvious questions, and to, look at facts, look at data, listen to different sides, et cetera, and simply try to find the truth.
Yeah, I think you just pretty much answered my question that I was going to ask, of what do you think we would need to do to wake people up? Because, I'm in agreement with you with a lot of the things that are happening. Seems a little bit too convenient, as if it is a distraction from important issues. I do not believe that out of nowhere racism was the top priority globally, because what a lot of Americans fail to understand is this talk about racism is happening worldwide. And I find that a little bit peculiar that happened as a result of the George Floyd incident.
Yes.
So in your opinion, like you just said, is it just a matter of more people speaking up, more people having conversations to get people to wake out of this alternate reality we're living in?
Yeah, I mean, it's tricky because the beauty and the curse of social media is everybody has a platform. Everybody has a voice, right? And that's a wonderful thing, right? We couldn't be doing what we're doing right now without it, but a lot of people are stupid too, right? There's millions and millions and millions of stupid people, right? And they have I know you're not meant to say that either, right? That's not PC, but it's just the truth. Some people are smart, some people are stupid. And, and so you've just got all these voices flying around everywhere. I do think, though, we need to just, I think a big problem now is that people are punished there's a perverse incentive where we live in a time where people are punished for being honest and people are punished for telling the truth, right? You're actually incentivized to lie, right? This goes from the media to politicians to even just individuals, right? Look at all this cancel culture stuff, right? People have been canceled for literally stating facts.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Right. Like, how can you be canceled for stating a fact? Like, what kind of world is that?
It's
so
offensive.
You're supposed to lie, right? Like, so you're incentivized to lie. And whenever you have a culture or a society where people are incentivized to lie, you're going to have problems. That's led to some of the biggest atrocities of the 20th centuries, right? People are living in this mass delusion. People know certain things are wrong, but they don't want to speak out. People know the truth, but they don't want to say it. People know that some things that's not really right, but they don't want to be seen as going against the grain, so they just go along with it. And so to me, that's really dangerous. That's really dangerous, and it can kind of it has this chilling effect, as I'm sure you all know, right? There's this chilling effect where I'm sure you guys all get people reaching out to you who are like, man, I wish I could say what you say, or I wish I could do what you do, or whatever. But like, I'm worried about this, or I'm worried about that, or I don't want to get canceled, or I don't want to face the mob, whatever it is. I don't know how many of these messages, thousands of them over the past 2 years, even. And that's crazy to me because we're supposed to live in two of the freest countries in the world. Right? Yeah, like in the UK and the USA, part of the whole point of these countries is you're supposed to have this thing called freedom of speech. Now, that doesn't mean that you go around being horrible to people and just trying to, you have a right to be, right? As I always say, it's not illegal to be an a-hole. You can do that. But that's not what most people want to do. I'm just talking about being willing to voice your honest opinion, right? I mean, obviously you guys have a new president now, but people could lose their job for saying that they support the president. Like, what is that?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. So how, yeah. I mean, even in this, okay, Trump lost this last election, but how many votes did he get? Like 80 million or something, roughly?
Yeah.
Was
it 75 to 80 million. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So say 75 million. So that's not some like rare out of the line viewpoint. 75 million people voted for the incumbent president. But so many people are like afraid to even say that. Right. And it's crazy. Like, anyone can come out and say, yeah, I voted for Joe Biden. I voted for Hillary Clinton. What, like, they can do that wherever. But I mean, how many celebrities, like, I can guarantee you, like, a lot of celebrities voted for Trump.
Yeah.
But how many of them would say that publicly?
Never.
Right.
Exactly.
And why? It's because, if you do, like, you're now and I'm just like, that's messed up. Like, that shouldn't be the case. Whether or not I personally like a political candidate or a party or whatever, I'm like, hey man, like, if you can go on TV and say, yeah, I voted for Hillary Clinton, you should be allowed to go on TV and say, yeah, I voted for Trump, and nobody should have any sort of horrible consequences coming to them from that. Like, that's new too. It wasn't like that before.
Yeah.
It wasn't like that before. So it's a bad trend. And so I would like to see more genuine tolerance. It's funny. That's actually what it is. It actually is. People talk a lot about tolerance and diversity and inclusion, but the people who talk about that the most tend to be the least diverse, the least tolerant, and the least inclusive people. Because as soon as you disagree with them, then like you're gonna feel that wrath. And I try to, like, genuinely practice those things. Like, I don't throw these buzzwords around all the time, but I genuinely appreciate diversity of thought. I genuinely do try to be inclusive. I genuinely do try to be tolerant, because tolerance is not just talking to or being okay with and being civil with people whom you agree with on everything. By definition, that's not tolerance. That's just people agreeing with you. Tolerance is, okay, this person is of a different ethnicity to me, or they're of a different religion, or they think differently, or they have a different political orientation, whatever. But you know what? That's cool. We can still get on in society. We can still even be friends with each other. We can get on with each other and be respectful, whatever. That's what tolerance is. Tolerance isn't just, okay, if you're not also Christian and conservative and sort of libertarian and you don't agree with me on everything, then, like, we're not even cool. Like, we can't even talk. That's really not the way forward at all. But you've got people who are being like that. And again, just look at history, look around the world. This always leads to something bad.
Oh yeah, totally. And I think that the big emphasis on racism now has been sort of a tool to encourage people to think of diversity only as far as skin color or physical attributes, and almost give, embolden people to just be totally intolerant to diversity of thought, which I think is the most dangerous thing. So you mentioned that all of these things could lead to something that is bad. Can you give me some insight of what you think this could lead to if we don't turn this around?
Wow. Well, I mean, there's stages of it. There are stages of it. This is going to sound extreme, but it's not. The end stage is genocide. Right? That's always where it leads if it totally runs unchecked. How many countries have we seen this in?
Yeah.
Right? How many countries have you seen that? Right? That's literally where, if you create, an us versus them mentality, and look, I often say this, there's only 3 ways to solve any conflict, whether it's interpersonal or it's even between countries. Okay. Number 1 is conversation, discussion, debate, trying to understand people, trying to negotiate and reach some kind of compromise. Number 2, segregation, right? Separate, segregate, divorce. You go over there, I go over there. We do not interact with each other. Number 2. Number 3, physical violence. That's all. Those are the only 3 options. So when people start to close down on the first one, I get very, very nervous. It's why I get nervous about censorship, about deplatforming, about this, hyper political correctness where you can't say this, you can't say that, you can't say, cancel culture, all of that, right? Because it's like, okay, you're closing down one of those three options here. And then also, we all know human beings are inherently tribal. What a lot of people even think is racism, it's all tribalism. It's all tribalism, right? You can go to parts of Africa, parts of Asia, parts of the Arab world, etc., where people, to us, to you and I, they look the same. They look the same. But the divisions between the tribes or the religions or, the ethnicities are much, much deeper and much more severe than, say, between Black and white Americans. And I think that's something that a lot of people in the US don't actually understand and appreciate, right? Because people have been sort of trained to think in this black and white way, very literally, right? It's white and it's black. And I'm like, no, like you're not getting this. Like you can go to Nigeria, and the division between two tribes in Nigeria where they look the same, right? These people are from the same country, right? And let alone them being black, right? Of course, but not just black, they're from the same country. And those divisions are much more severe than anything that exists between, say, white Americans or black Americans. You can go to China and see the same thing. You can see this in South America. You can see this all over. So human beings are tribal. As we've been saying, people get tribal over everything. I mean, they've done experiments where they've literally just given people stickers, like different colored stickers, and then like they leave them for a while, and they find that the people who have the same sticker color start to like congregate together or whatever, right? Look at sports. Sports. Yeah. Right? In the UK, you've got, I don't know if this is how much of a thing this is in the States, but in the UK, you have it's not a big a problem now as it used to be, I think, in like the 80s and the 90s, but like football hooliganism, right? Where you've literally got gangs based around which sports team they support, and they're willing to beat each other up. You'll have people getting murdered for like wearing the wrong football jersey in a certain city or in a certain place or whatever. And it's just like, this shows the insanity of human tribalism, right? Look at Boston. In everything, right? Religious violence. Who are the victims of the majority of Islamic terrorism? Other Muslims, right? Who is look at Northern Ireland, right? The Catholics and the Protestants have been like fighting each other for decades, bombing each other, murdering each other, etc. I'm like, not only are you all Irish, not only are you all Northern Irish, you're all Christian. You're all Christian and you're still bombing each other, right? So like human tribalism is this crazy, crazy thing. And there are people in power who know this, right? And so it's always divide and conquer, right? So anytime you can find one of those intersections and chop society up into those little groups, and if you can then create some kind of animosity between them, then it's always bad. And I think that one thing people need to be careful of, very careful of, is not doing this kind of the shoes on the other foot now kind of thing. Do you see what I mean? So I think there's a lot of people who, rather than seeking equality, they seek revenge.
Yeah,
So you see this with say some black people, right? So we all know, especially in the USA, black people have been historically oppressed, right? State-sponsored slavery, segregation, Jim Crow, denial of certain things, redlining, etc. Right? There's lots of things that have happened in which it's like, okay, this has happened. And actually now, like, I know, look, and this is not me saying, oh, everything is perfect, right? I know that everything's not perfect, but in terms of the law and generally in society, for the first time in history, for the past couple of decades, it's like, okay, actually, there's equality, right? Regardless of someone's race, gender, ethnicity, sexual orientation, whatever. It's not like, okay, this is the law for you guys. This is the law for you guys. That's what it used to be like.
Right.
South Africa, apartheid. That's what it was. If you're white, you can do this. If you're black, you can't do that. If you're this, you can do this. People weren't even allowed to intermarry across. Like, so much progress has been made, which is a wonderful thing. And I think that people need to be very careful that it's not just like, I've noticed something. I'm sure you guys have seen this as well over the past years. It's kind of like, it's kind of been open season on white people, right? Especially white men, right?
But people don't like talking about that though.
No. Yeah. So you could go on Twitter and say like the wildest thing about like white people or like white men or what, like very aggressive, like straight up. And it's like, okay, I have a general rule with these things. Okay. If you can substitute one or two words with like a different group and it sounds really terrible, then you probably shouldn't say it.
I like that
Okay.
rule.
So if someone writes like, right. So if someone says something crazy about white men, and I'm like, okay, if you swap the word white with like black or Jewish, or you swap the word men with women, right? How would that sentence sound? Okay.
Right.
And right. And if it would sound horrible, then it's like, okay, well, maybe it is horrible, you know? And I can understand in human nature this sort of desire to have that kind of backlash. But, you know, I think you see this in some aspects of the sort of like modern day so-called feminist movement as well, where it's just like, okay, it's no longer we want equality and the same opportunities as men. It's, you know, oh, like it's like F men, right?
Yeah.
It's like screw men. Yeah, exactly, right?
Now.
I mean, I mean, can you imagine kill all women trending on Twitter? What?
Twitter
Yeah,
would
imagine. No, like you people would be like, wait, what is going on? That would be like the biggest thing in the world. But if it's kill all men, they're like, oh, you know, that's okay, you know, patriarchy, whatever.
You know,
and I'm like, no. Go ahead.
It's funny that you mentioned that with how, like, you know, people talk about, oh, fuck white people, fuck this and stuff like that. But those are the same people who say that, and they have the significant other is white. So I was like,
that
wait.
does happen. It's weird.
So it's like you're saying fuck white people, fuck white men and women, but you're being fucked by them. So what is it?
Maybe we just misunderstood what they meant. Maybe actually it was like maybe it was all about interracial relations.
It just blows my mind, because it's like, oh well, white people never understands our struggle and such. They can never. It's like, so why the fuck are you with one? Do you tell him that? Do you tell him or her that when they ask you shit, or do you just go past your? Does this go over your head? The same thing with the radical feminist fourth wave feminism. Fourth wave feminism is pretty much men are bad no matter what. Men bad, and it's just like, but at the same time, men should do. I'm independent, but men still have to do for me. No, you're gonna be treated just like us. So when I see a woman on the train that doesn't have a seat, guess what I'm doing? I am sitting my ass down, because you were just the same as me. I am put like this. So I tell people all the time, like, listen, your sisters for years for this equality. I'm gonna treat you the same way I treat a dude. If I call you a fucking idiot, it's because you're a fucking idiot. It's not because you're a woman. I have a female project manager. She can be a fucking moron because she's a fucking moron. She does stupid shit. It's not because she's a woman. I get two shits. Like, I'm gonna treat the same way.
Yeah.
Right?
No, I'm not paying for dinner. You gonna pay your half. It's equality.
Full on equality, man.
I don't open doors. I'm sorry, but one last thing. I don't open doors for women anymore, because like the last time I held the door open for women, she was like, she said this. Oh, I don't need you to hold the door for me. I was like, all right, fuck you. Never again. I'm not doing it.
Yeah. I often say chivalry is dead and women killed it.
Yes,
I agree with
facts.
you.
It's true.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I'm still benevolently sexist, so at least. So I guess it's
horrible. Horrible.
Yeah, no, but I mean, something I often say again, and this leads into the, you know, the shoe on the other foot thing is, you know, people need to decide if they want equal treatment or special treatment, because they are mutually exclusive, right? These things are mutually exclusive. If you want to be sort of treated as some sort of like, I don't know, oppressed class or special class or some interest group or whatever, then by definition, you don't have equal treatment. Right. Just like, you know, it's kind of like what we do with children, right? With children, we treat them differently. We don't treat children the same as we do adults. We understand, okay, they need extra protection. They can't do everything. They can't consent to certain things. They don't have the brain capacity to deal with certain. So it's like, okay, we'll give children special treatment. Children have a special designation in society. That's why even if a child commits a crime, you don't try them the same way as an adult, etc. But then I think when it comes to adults, we have a lot of people who simultaneously are demanding equal treatment and special treatment. And that never works. You know, using your example of like, some of these, you know, so-called feminist women is they'll demand equality, but then they want to have the cake and eat it, right? They do want to have that woman, you know, they kind of want that chivalrous, hey, like guys should treat me kind of special and with certain protections or whatever, or talk to me a certain way because I'm a woman. But then 2 seconds later, it's all the you go girlism, you know, F men, you know, whatever. And then 2 seconds later, it's, oh, you know, I'm a poor oppressed class. And then it's like, no, like women are better than men. it's very confusing. Right? It's very confusing. I think the people advocating it for themselves are confused, but it's also confusing to everybody else because it's kind of like, wait, what is the request here? What's the demand? Even when someone's like, okay, I want equality, I'm like, okay, what do you mean? Right? If you said that back in 1950, I'm like, okay, I get you. If you're saying that in 2021, I'm like, okay, what do you mean? Be specific. Because if there's a certain thing, again, like if there's an area where, any group of people, I don't even care who it is. If you can show me where, okay, like this group of people is being like mistreated or being heavily biased against or discriminated against or whatever, I'm like, okay, cool. Like show me, like, let's fix that together. But if it's just like these very general ideas, it's why I don't really like terms like structural racism and institutional racism and was it structural, institutional, and systemic? Those are the ones people like to throw out, or people, attach sexism to those as well. And I'm like, to me, these are just not useful terms because you can't identify anything, right? They're so general. I'm like, okay, so if you're saying the system, I'm like, which system? Like which part of the system? Who? Like what policy? Which person? Which individual? Because if you just say, oh, the system is racist, what do we do with that? I'm like, right. I can't do anything with that, right? And it's something you can say forever. It's like, okay, so when will the system not be racist? Like what goals do we have to reach where we can be like, okay, the system is fair, or the structure or the institution or whatever. And it's like, and also it's really funny because the people who say this in the USA, at least, right? The people who say this the most, it'll be in like in cities that have been like run by Democrats for like 30 years straight or something. And I'm like, you guys are the system, you run the institution, you run this. So when you're levying all these charges, like you're levying them at yourself. I don't know why no one ever seems to notice that. So yeah, I don't know. It's we live in a weird time. And I think also, again, in 2021, I think the demand for sexism outstrips the supply, the demand for racism outstrips the supply, etc. So people are finding it or looking for it in places where it may not even be. I think again, we see that a lot. That's not to say that there is no racism or there is no sexism. And I also think it's impossible to ever totally get rid of those things, by the way, because human beings are flawed, right? Yeah. Human beings are flawed. There's certain things you can reduce and you can minimize, but you cannot totally, you just can't totally eliminate. Just like you can't totally eliminate crime. I would love it if you could. That'd be great. But the only way you could do it is by eliminating humanity. And that's not a viable solution there.
No, I mean, if you look for racism, you're going to find racism.
Oh, you will find it.
Yeah, I mean, why do you think we've mentioned the ridiculous things? It's like someone looked at the syrup bottle and was like, that's so when you're looking for it, especially when it doesn't exist, that's why you see people reaching out to ridiculous things. And like you said, we're flawed. So that's always, we're never going to be in the utopia. So yeah.
No, I was going to say, and also what also happens is the bar for these things drops and drops and drops and drops, right? So a really interesting one to me is when people now say white supremacy. Okay, I remember what white supremacy used to mean. White supremacy used to mean, okay, this is an ideology that's claiming that white people are inherently superior to other races of people. Right? They're inherently superior, right? Like what Hitler believed, what the KKK believed, like, white people, Aryan race, whatever, like these people are just superior. Everybody else is like a lesser class of human being inherently. This is just the way of nature. That's what white supremacy means. Now people are just throwing this label around like ketchup, right? They're just calling everything white supremacy. This is white supremacy. That's white. And I'm like, what are you guys, like, what are you talking about? By what definition, right? They see an executive boardroom that has like eight white people in it and one brown person. And they're like, white supremacy. And I'm like, bro, what are you talking about? Right. I've seen everything being called white supremacy. And I'm just like, I call it label inflation. Yeah. And also that's another thing that's really that's another dangerous pattern, because if you call everything racist, then nothing is. Right. If you call everything white supremacy, then nothing is. And actually, if you do get a genuine Nazi coming around the corner, or someone riding on a horse with a KKK hood, what do you call that person? Like a super mega Nazi white supremacist? Like you run out of names, right? You run out of words. And I think it's maybe this comes from me being a rapper, but language is very important, and being able to use language in terms precisely and with meaning is how we all communicate. If I say a word, the only way we can have this conversation is because each word we're saying has a specific meaning, a certain context, and it makes sense. If you just start using words where they don't mean anything, then you can't have conversations. Right now, they're trying to redefine the words men and women, right? They're trying to literally redefine the words so that, it's been simple. Our entire lives, it's been very simple, right? You have males, you have male, female, boys, girls, men, women. We all know what these words mean. Now you've got people who are like pushing and pushing and pushing, and they're literally trying to, and it's what ends up with this bizarre thing where you'll see like an article online and they're calling women like menstruators or vagina owners or like people who get pregnant or people who lactate, like these really weird dehumanizing, really weird dehumanizing terms. And I'm just like, what are we doing here, guys? Like, what is this? Like, we all know what a woman is. So why are we playing this crazy game where we're just denying reality?
Right. That's a good question. I would love to know the answer to that. I want to know, have you ever been called a white supremacist yet?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, all right, cool.
I definitely
I have as well recently.
Damn, is my ideology this obvious on the podcast? Damn. I've been trying to hide it.
I've seen the Twitter comments. That's why. It's like, oh, get your white supremacist ideas out, and you're being called a white supremacist by a white person, which I find even more hilarious.
Probably by someone that wants to fight racism as well.
Yeah, you'd think that by the time you get to the stage of calling black people white supremacists and Jewish people Nazis, that maybe you're just wrong, right? Like what's more likely, you being wrong or that black person being a white supremacist? Like, which is more likely?
Right.
I think they're so far gone that like they're rolling with it. You're like, you know what? I'm already this far. I gotta go all the way.
Yeah, it's embarrassing though. It's embarrassing and it's crazy. I mean, we had this maybe things in that sense have calmed down a tiny bit. But in 2016, obviously there were two big political events that happened in the UK and the USA. In the UK, you had the Brexit vote, and in the USA, you had Trump getting elected. And for 4 years straight, certain people, and still to this day, they cling to the idea that everyone who voted for Brexit and or everybody who voted for Trump is racist. That's it. That's all. Like it's that simple, right? The answer, why did Trump win? It's because 70 million plus Americans are just racist. That's it. Why did Brexit happen? Oh, it's because, 18 million British people are racist and they don't want foreigners. So they want to break. And to some people, it's that simple. And I'm just like, how can someone be that? How can you be that ignorant?
But
what's crazy about it is I've heard people who are otherwise very intelligent say these kind of things, which is very disheartening to me, because I'm just like, it's like, why don't you just talk to people? If you want to understand why someone did something or why someone voted a certain way or why someone holds a certain belief, why don't you just talk to them? Why don't you just ask them, right? These are your neighbors, right? These are people around you, probably people you work with, etc. So if you genuinely don't understand, why would somebody vote for Trump? I don't like Trump. Why would somebody vote for Trump? Why don't you talk to someone who voted for him? In fact, why don't you talk to a black woman who voted for him, right? If you have this idea that, it's just racist white dudes who voted for him in the South or whatever, then why don't you talk to a black woman from New York who voted for him? Have that conversation, right? And just be like, okay, why did you vote for him? And this runs in all ways. If you're totally confused as to why somebody might believe in God, if you don't believe in God and you're confused as to somebody why don't you talk to someone who believes in God and ask them, okay, why do you believe in God? Like, talk to me. Same the other way around. If you're a believer and you're confused by these atheists or whatever, why don't you talk to someone who, okay, why don't you believe in God? Have these conversations, and that's how you understand people, and it's also just how you understand the world. I mean, we got 7 billion people on this big spinning rock, with all sorts of different beliefs, No two people are exactly the same, and the way you understand people and build empathy and reduce conflict is by talking. And no, we're not all going to agree with everything, which is great, by the way. Like it's actually really good that that's the case. But you'll at least be able to understand things better. And if you understand the world better, you can also navigate in the world better, because you at least you have a better understanding of the people around you and just why things are the way they are. So instead of getting blindsided all the time and being like confused by everything that goes outside of your bubble, you understand it. So you're at least like, okay, I get that. There's some people who think this way, or there's some people who believe this because of this, or, you know, these are the reasons why this happened. You know, I think that's a much better place to be in than, you know, making assumptions, especially because in many cases, most of these assumptions are, not only are they wrong, but they're very negative. It's always like, okay, well, if someone believes something different from me, then it's because they're stupid. It's because they're ignorant. It's because they're racist. It's because they hate X group of people. It's because they hate that. It's like most people's views are not based on hatred, right? Sometimes they're based on ignorance, but they're not normally based on like, oh, it's just because like they hate this person, right? Oh, you know, why do conservatives want lower taxes? No, it's because they hate poor people. It's like, really? Really? Is that it? They just hate poor people and they want them to die? Does that sound right in your head? Your conservative neighbor who you've been living next door to for 10 years and who like has taken your kids to baseball and who's like you've had dinner with or whatever. You think he just hates poor people? Does that make sense? You know, it can't be that simple, right? You know, and this goes across the board with absolutely everything. But I think as human beings, we like to do these shortcuts just to like, it's just lazy thinking, right? It's lazy. It's easier to just go, oh, like they're just stupid, or they're just that. And then you can just dismiss it and you don't have to think about it.
Yeah. I mean, that's what we kind of experienced all through last year. It was just like a swarm of a lot of our friends just out of nowhere just disassociated themselves with us, like, because I voted for Trump.
Please tell me about this.
Well, yeah, I mean, I voted for Trump, and I got my start on Twitch as a live streamer doing gaming stuff, and just recently I started doing it on YouTube with like the social and political commentary, so I said, you know what? I started to see how the public was treating people that voted for Trump and grouping them up with like, oh, you're clearly racist, you're clearly a fascist. And I said, wait a minute, I'm not none of those things. I just researched and made my decision. So I went on Twitter and I announced it just to like, so there's no surprise, hey, I voted for Trump. And then all of a sudden, all of my friends, some people that I've had over the apartment, we've gone out to dinner with, we've gone on trips together. These people out of nowhere were just like, okay, well, you're voting for a fascist. You are against human rights. You are against gay rights because you voted for Trump. And it's like, have a conversation with me. And it was for weeks after I announced it was for weeks that people were just keeping tabs on my YouTube channel saying, oh, she's still talking about Trump. She's still talking about politics. Go look. I had some person, I swear, I had some person on Twitter make a thread announcing to all of her followers, hey, look at this YouTuber who said they voted for Trump. And then they contacted my sponsors to try to get me, get my sponsorship dropped because of that. And this is a common symptom that I'm seeing where people are losing their employment over who they voted for. And nobody seems to connect the dots of, okay, this is a problem.
And it only runs one way.
Yeah, it does.
It only runs one way.
Yeah, it does.
It
and
does.
People that deny that are being completely ignorant and just out of their mind, because we've had friends who are like, well, it's on both sides. No.
It's not.
No.
It's just not. It's not.
Someone got
You have
fired from their job for voting for Biden. No.
And you're from the UK, so you can speak objectively.
Yeah, you know, sometimes that's an interesting thing because I get a lot of love and a lot of hate from certain people in the States because like they sort of don't like it if people oh well you're not American, right? So that you shouldn't or you can't talk on the USA. But the analogy I actually use sometimes is that you can see a picture better if you stand further away from it, right? If you're standing like right in front of a painting, imagine there's a huge painting on the wall and you're standing right in front of it, you can't tell what it is. But actually, if you step back, oh wow, okay, you can see the whole picture. And I don't have a dog in the fight, right? I didn't vote for Trump or for Biden. I can't, right? I'm not a citizen. So yeah, sure, I have my leanings, and that's fine. But I'm just looking at it dispassionately. Like my emotions are not in this thing. I'm just observing, and I do have a very big platform. Like I'm interacting with way more people than almost anybody, right? I'm in the UK, in the USA, whatever. I'm connected to all these hundreds of thousands of people, millions really. And so I'm observing, and this is over the course of years as well. It's not just like, just right now. I'm observing this over years, and I'm talking to different people, and I'm having all these conversations, etc. It's funny. I remember it's really interesting because I had a single tweet which blew up in 2018. This is prior to the deadlift one. I had a single tweet which started just gaining me tons and tons of US followers. And those US followers were generally more Republican Trump supporters, right? Because I had you guys remember when Kanye West first wore the MAGA hat?
Yep.
And
Yeah. Broke the internet.
And it broke the internet, right? I tweeted something like, LOL at all the people saying Kanye West is lost. Maybe he's not the lost one. Right? I just tweeted that, and it went viral in like sort of American conservative Twitter, which I wasn't really connected to at the time. At this stage, I had like 16,000 followers. I'm just a rapper here in the UK, but I saw that thing, and I saw, remember when I was on CNN and they said, this is what happens when Negroes don't read. And like they were just saying, I was like, yo,
I didn't
know they did that.
Yeah. They said, this is what happens when, Kanye West is an example of what happens when Negroes don't read. I was just like, on CNN.
They said that.
I'm just like,
I'm not surprised now hearing it.
Yeah, but like, can you imagine if like one of the Fox News pundits said that?
Right.
People would
they
be
burned the building down.
Dude, I was just like, yikes. Okay, so it's this sort of deep, And so I said that. And again, I'm just like, hey, all these other celebrities in the music industry, Hollywood, whatever, like they're all like, go Hillary, pro-Democrat, like open with it. So I'm like, okay, so interesting. So Kanye West somehow likes Trump, and now he's all these things. Like, how come you can all support Hillary, but he can't say he likes Trump, right? Whether or not you can disagree with him, but he should be allowed to say it. Right. It shouldn't just be, hey, black man, stay in your lane. And I'm like, yo, that's racism. Right. I'm like, that's racism. You're saying because he's black, he must think this way, he must vote this way, etc. And I've seen this for years. I've seen all this for years. So I just put out that tweet, and it's really interesting because that's when I started to get like all these followers. And I remember even at that time, I actually had a couple people be kind of like, oh man, like, are you sure you want to be like talking to these Trump supporters or whatever? And I'm like, man, like I know tons of people who vote, like even in 2016, I know tons of people who voted for Trump or whatever. Like I know some of the, do you guys know Mike Cernovich?
That sounds very
no.
Okay.
No.
Really. Okay. Well, my he's got a really, really big platform. I mean, he's a friend of mine. He was kind of like very much in the MAGA movement from like 2015 before this thing even. So like I'd been following all this, which is why even in the UK, it's funny. When Trump got elected, like this blindsided almost everyone in the UK, and I'm just angry I didn't put money on it, right? Because when I was going to, the odds were 30-1, and I didn't because people were telling me I was crazy because I was having these conversations. People were laughing at me because this is before he'd even won the Republican nomination, and I was like, because everyone was just laughing at this Trump, and I was like, guys, you guys are underestimating how many people are going to vote for him. Like you're not seeing the wave that is coming here. Like I could see it because I'm actually, everyone else is like refusing to interact with all these people, and I'm there interacting. I'm like, yo, okay. And I'm also seeing like all the political correctness stuff coming to a head and certain things. And I'm just like, man, like Trump is going to do well. Like, I don't know if he's going to win, but, and then in the debates when he was just like, remember he was wiping people out in the debates. I was just like, yo, man, like this guy's going to get votes, So yeah, I did turn out to be right, but I didn't put my money where my mouth was. But I saw all that coming, and I had a lot of people who, not a lot, but a few people were kind of like, ooh, why Zuby interacting with these Trump supporters or whatever? Because they've been convinced by the media that all Trump supporters are racist or they're this or they're that. And I'm like, no, they're not. Like these are people I know, right? These are people I know. So I know that's not the case. And I'm having conversations saying, okay, like, why are you voting for Trump? Like, what's the, and I'm like, okay, yeah, I get that. And then people also forget he ran against Hillary Clinton, who was like a very, very flawed candidate. So I was like, okay, if the choice is between those two, a lot of people, they might not come out and say it publicly, but they're gonna go vote for Trump, So that was actually that particular tweet sort of opened that side for me a lot. And then from then on, I've just been in this place where I'm just communicating with everybody on every side. I know people who are like the most die-hard Trump support. I mean, I know people in the administration. Like, I've been invited to the I was invited to the White House 3 times during the last administration. Go? Yeah, I went twice.
Oh, cool.
That's dope.
Yeah. So it's like, you know, I know, and I'm connected to all these people. And then also, like, I know people who despise Trump, right? Even in my own family, I know people who despise Trump and who just like don't get it or whatever. But, you know, and you have these conversations, same with friends, whatever it is. But one thing that is a blessing for me is I've never lost a good friend over any of this, which is really
lucky.
do you know what? I don't even think it's luck. I don't think it's luck. I think a big part of it is because I've always had these conversations with people. So I think where people lose friends tends to be more if they sort of switch sides, or if it seems like they're switching sides, right? So if someone was like a liberal and someone was like a Democrat, and then they go and vote, they don't only vote Republican, but they vote for Trump or something, then that creates this huge sort of rift in people's brains, because they've decided to frame it as simply as like good versus evil.
Yeah.
Right. So if that's how someone's brain has framed the whole situation, and I think the media is largely responsible for this, by the way, then you, Vanessa, are now, you're actually evil. You're on the side of evil now. So it makes sense to disassociate. To them, it makes sense to disassociate with you, right? You know, it's more nuanced than that. Right. Like, no, of course not. Right. Of course not. And I think because with my close circle of friends and in my family, like we always kind of talk about these things, whether it's agree, disagree, whatever. Like, I have lots of friends who like I, disagree with strongly on certain things or whatever. But we know, firstly, we understand each other's positions, but also at the core, we know that we know that we're good people. Right. So I know, okay, if someone disagrees with me on like all the, it's not as simple as it's because they're a bad person or they're evil or something. It's like, no, because I know people like that. So it's just a mutual respect thing. It's a respect thing, and it's a tolerance thing. So I think for me, that's why, there are certainly people who like, have unfollowed me for my politics or whatever, but not like people who are like close to me. I've never had that where it's like, oh man, I've heard some horrible stories, man, awful stories of people, losing their marriages, losing their relationships, like, losing like close friends for 20 years, no longer speaking to their grandchildren or their children or their parents, all that kind of horrible stuff. I've heard thousands of stories, I'd say, not even hundreds, thousands, which is really, really heartbreaking. And it's a shame because it also sort of reveals, I think on the sad thing is it also reveals like, maybe that relationship wasn't what you thought it was, right? Like I can't fathom the idea. If I think any of my close friends or my family, I can't even fathom the idea of, they vote for like a candidate I don't like and I cut them off, or that, they support. I'm like, no, like the relationship is so much deeper than that I'm like, okay, I might totally disagree with you on that thing. And we can talk about that, but like, I'm not going to just be like, you know what, you're gone, cut you off. Like, that's it. Let alone start telling people that like, you're you're something bad. So yeah, in a very, very weird way, maybe when that happens, maybe it's a good thing.
Yeah.
Maybe it's a good thing kind of in the long run. Cause if someone can't simply respect that difference, then how true a friend are they really, No,
I think you're totally on point with that. In 2016, I had a little bit of a confrontation with a close friend because she voted for Trump, and back then I suffered from Trump derangement syndrome. So I was quick to associate her with voting for a racist. I wasn't so far gone in the Trump derangement syndrome where I just cut her off entirely, but in the back of my mind, I still had some resentment. Like, why would she vote for this guy? I'm black. Why would you vote? And even on this podcast, because because like I said, I've only started rethinking my thought process and actually asking questions a matter of like 6 months ago. And there's some episodes on here where I was very public with my Trump derangement syndrome, all orange man bad on the podcast. And I think it was just the fact that when I was making content over on Twitch, I would have these rules of never to talk about politics, never to talk about all of these issues that I think would result in confrontation. And then I realized, well, wait a minute, how informed am I on these topics that I'm talking about? Am I actually informed, or am I informed only as far as the headlines that CNN puts out? And I realized that it was the latter. So I do think that if I can give any advice to anybody listening right now, I think, what Zuby is doing, or what I have started doing, is just being upfront about who you are, so that there is no surprises. There's no questions. It's like, you get what you get. I have nothing to hide. And sometimes I kick myself for it. If I was as open as I am now a year ago, maybe I wouldn't have run into this problem, and I could have avoided building these friendships with people that ended up being very fragile in the long run, because as you mentioned, I can't imagine ending a friendship with someone over a political difference.
No, I mean, look, keeping it real from the beginning is, and I mean that in the truest sense, like truly being yourself off the bat from the beginning it's the way forward. I mean, what's really interesting that's happened over the past 2 years is I've become this sort of like lightning rod or magnet for people in general, but even more so like people who are pretty high profile, who are like closet conservatives or like closet libertarians or whatever, like in the music world, in Hollywood and entertainment, like who, or even in sports, etc. All these different things, or just general people who kind of like confide in me, right? And who will like sort of share these crazy stories with me or whatever it is. And there are a lot of people who are kind of being held hostage, shall we say, not just by their industry, but if they are even independent or they're musicians or something, they're held hostage actually by their audience, because they've reached a stage where they can't be true to themselves anymore, because they know that it will upset their audience, because they've kind of built it on some falsity and opacity. They haven't really been transparent. So I think one thing that I've done, I'm very grateful for, and I recommend this to other people as much as possible, especially if you're starting out, is from the beginning, be truly yourself, right? I can understand the temptation to want to especially chase certain social trends, right? To sort of jump on certain bandwagons. Hey, this social justice bandwagon, this Black Lives Matter thing, this Me Too movement, whatever. Like, let me just jump on all these movements and put out the hashtags and the tweets and whatever. Let me do that because it'll gain followers and people will like it and whatever. But if you yourself aren't truly on board with certain things, then you paint yourself into a corner. And then when you want to come out of that corner, that's when you get the canceling, and you get the backlash, and you get the losing friends, and you get the conflict, because again, it's like it causes this cognitive dissonance in people, because you've now violated the thing, right? They have that, like I said, the good and evil thing, and they're like, okay, you're good, you're on my side here, you're tweeting the right things, you've got the right hashtags and the right pronouns in your bio, and then and then you put something on, and then it violates what's in their head, and it's like, okay, well, this person has gone from being here to now being over here. Whereas if from the beginning you just keep it real, sure, you'll have people who don't like. There are thousands upon thousands of people all over the internet who, I won't even say maybe they don't like me. I think in more cases it's more like they think they don't like me because they don't really know me in most cases. But there are thousands, tons, possibly hundreds of thousands of people on Twitter who are like, I don't like that Zuby guy.
Right.
Right. Like, and I really saw this when I got temporarily banned, because I saw how many thousands of people were celebrating. But that's like a real thing. But it's also, but there's hundreds of thousands of people who love what I do. Right. And so it's like, okay, you just got to kind of deal with that, because I'm not putting on a show. Right. I'm not putting on any show. I'm just sharing what I genuinely believe. If I say something that's so-called controversial, it's not because okay, I don't actually believe this, but I just want to annoy people, and I just want to provoke. I don't do that. But I also won't say something just because it's like, okay, this is just what my audience wants to hear or whatever. I mean, one of the funniest tweets ever I had was, I had a tweet where I complimented both Trump and Obama in the same tweet.
And what
Wow,
happened?
you must have.
The response was amazing. I was just like, wow, okay. So I had people like, it was really interesting, right? Because people know I'm more like, conservative leaning or whatever. But again, a lot of conservatives say in the USA, right, they particularly dislike Obama. Whereas with me, I think the tweet was something like, I said something like, both Obama and Trump are very iconic presidents who will go down forever in history, which is true, by the way, right? Like they were both groundbreaking in their own way. Like, no, people aren't going to forget about Obama, first black president. Like, the thing was huge, right? Like, 2008, I remember that time, man. Like, regardless of what you think of him or his policies, you can't really deny that Obama was like, that was like a moment in history. That was a big thing, more so than like, George Bush or like, I don't know, even Bill Clinton or whatever. And then same with Trump. Even if you don't like Trump, you cannot deny that like the Trump movement, the MAGA movement, like the way he came out, like just attacking the media, like nobody had seen that before. Like wild tweets, like no one had seen that before. He went from reality TV to the president. Like no one had seen this. He wasn't even in the system. And so like, yeah, I put out that tweet and it was very funny because I did have some people who were like extremists, like like the people who are just like too far gone on either side, who are like, that does it, like unfollowed, I thought you were one of us. I thought you were on my team, whatever. I'm like, dude, man, like,
Oh, that's
funny. I'm not on a team. Like I can recognize there are things that I admire about Obama, and there are things that I dislike about him. There's things I admire about Trump. There's things I dislike about him. I think they've both done good or bad. I don't think either of them are like evil. I think they're both men who wanted to do the best thing they could for the USA. People will have different ideas of how well they did it, but that's my personal opinion, right? Just because just because I like Trump doesn't mean I hate Obama. Right.
Some people,
just because someone hates,
some people think it's not possible to hold two positions at the same time. It's like, no, you need to hate everything about this guy.
It is. And I think part of it is also me. I'm generally an optimistic person, right? I'm not perfect at it, but I try to see the good in people. And as someone who's an entrepreneur, I want to take like the best. I want to take like the best from people, right? There is so much stuff that Trump did that I'm like, oh, wow. Okay. Like I can cherry pick this. I can cherry pick that. Like the way he like used Twitter, right? The way he used the internet, the way he used the media against themselves, the way he like took out all of his opposition who are seasoned veterans in politics. And he just came, I'm like, yo, that's inspiring. Like that inspired me. I think that's the same thing Kanye West loved. I don't think Kanye was even about the politics. I think he was just like, yo, like the way he's done this.
Different.
It's different. It's different. Like the way he's just kind of come here. I'm like, yo, that means if Donald Trump can be president, just in the way like some people saw, oh, wow, Obama can be president, that puts in a lot of people's brains. Like I remember, back in, I remember at a time when people said the USA would never have a black president. It wasn't even that long ago. I remember in the 90s, even in the early 2000s, people were like, the USA is like never going to have a black president, right? I always knew it was possible, but some people would say stuff like that. There's never been a UK. Of course, the UK can have a black prime minister. It hasn't happened yet because the right person hasn't come along yet, but it will happen. It will. Facts. It's going to happen. I don't need a black person to do that to know that it's possible. I already know it's possible. So I already knew Obama was possible. And then with Trump, it was like, it's like, wow, anyone can be president. I was like, wow, anyone can be president. Like you don't have to be in the Democratic Party for like decades or in the Republican Party for decades. Like you could just say the right things, like capture a mass of people at the right time, the right moment, do it the right way, especially in this age of social media. And you can do that even in something non-political. It's just like, oh wow, okay, this is possible. Like someone can use these tools to do this thing. And to me, that's always inspiring. It's the same as even in the world of music and hip hop, right? There's a lot of artists whose music I love. There's a lot of artists whose music I don't like at all. But even those artists whose music I don't like, if they've built an audience of millions of people, I can learn from them. How's this guy using Instagram? How's he using Facebook? How's he using Twitter? What's he doing on Spotify? How are they doing this? Why do people like them? Even if I don't like their music, I'm like, okay, how are they doing this? How have they captured this? And you can learn from everybody. And I think that one thing that leads to greatness is being willing to just learn from everybody and not just always be focusing on the negative and the stuff you don't like and the stuff you think is bad or whatever, but being like, okay, what's this person doing that's good, and what can I take away from it? Even the stuff that's bad, okay, why do I not like it? And then that's maybe something I can avoid doing. Mm-hmm. There's always ways to be learning, and it's easy to be, critical, but actually, if you sort of switch that and you think, okay, what is this person doing that's good? Like, what can I take from this? What can I get from this? Then actually, I think that's one of the keys to success. I think a lot of people sort of limit who they are allowed to be influenced by.
Yup.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And just really quick, because I know we're a little bit over time. We don't want to take too much of your time today.
Oh, good. I'm actually really enjoying the conversation.
Yeah,
so I saw the time and I was like, you know what? I don't even mind.
Oh, I appreciate that.
Nice.
What was I gonna say? Yeah, like one criticism that, or one thing that I get a lot with my channel is I get attacked a lot by Black Twitter. They don't like my YouTube, and a lot of Black content creators specifically will say that, oh well, the reason that I'm growing on YouTube is because I'm catering to a white audience. And what's interesting about that is always the type of rhetoric that I'll hear, but I've never heard one of these creators ask me for advice. What are you doing to market? Like, what are you doing for your branding? And these are important questions that I wish people would ask. Like, why isn't society seeking out that mentorship, that guidance, that willingness to self-analyze your content or self-analyze how you go about creating that content, instead of just saying, oh, well, the reason you're seeing this is because white audience. And I think that's a very, it's limiting with your growth.
Yeah, they associate success with white people. Like, that's why you're doing well.
Yeah.
And but then there's the same people that they'll call her a white supremacist. It's just like, y'all are not consistent with this.
No, it's nutty. And there's what they're saying there is actually twofold. Number one, firstly, they are implying that there is something wrong with having a white audience.
Right.
Which there isn't, right? Because they're saying that to put you on the defensive, right? They want you to be like, and I don't even get defensive about that. I'm like, yeah, I've got tons of white fans. They're awesome. Right? Straight up. I've got tons of black fans. They're awesome. I've got tons of brown fans. I got fans of every stripe. Straight up. Right? I live in the UK. The UK is the UK is like a 90% white country. Like, the fact that I have white fans, it's like, okay, so you want me to just target 2% of the population? How's that going to work? I make music. I don't make music for just black people or just like, I just make music. Right? So it's interesting because what they're saying is twofold. So number one, like, they're saying that as some kind of like, okay, that's inherently bad. But then again, also, like you said, they're not just taking away from your success or trying to downplay it, but they're also limiting their own, right? They're limiting their own. Like, they could say, oh, wow, okay, this is a person who's achieving things that I want to achieve. Why, rather than coming at them sideways and coming at them all hostile, why don't I just say, hey, I've been following your YouTube channel. Congratulations on your growth. Like, I've got a small channel. Could you give me some advice? Or like, simple as that.
Right.
And most people like helping other people as long as you approach someone decently. Most people actually really like advising and helping other people to overcome things that they found really difficult. Right. Like, I used to be fat. Like, people don't even know this, right? Well, like, I'm really into like fitness and training and whatever now. And I love helping people. It's why I wrote the book. Like, I want to help people build muscle, like lose weight, get stronger. Like, I've been through that grind. So I want to show you. But if you just come at me sideways and are like, oh, like, you've just got good genetics, or I bet you take steroids. And I'm like, dude, like, you've just blown it. It's like, why did you just, you could say, hey man, like, I'm trying to lose weight. Can you give me some advice? Or, does your book cover that? Or, I'm stuck on my bench press. How can I make it strong? Like, I'll help you. But if it's just like I don't know, it's that thing. It's the loser mentality and the winner mentality, man. And I think to me, mindset is everything, man. I think mindset is everything. If you have the right mindset, then no matter your circumstances, no matter where you begin, no matter whatever, like, life is long, generally, Lord willing, you've got several decades to live your life and to succeed. So no matter what position you're starting from, you can't choose the cards that you're dealt, but you can choose how you play them. Right.
Yeah.
Everyone is dealt a different hand. And firstly, with that said, let me tell people straight up, anybody listening to this, if you are a young person, like if you are alive in 2021 and you live in the UK or the USA or any Western country, you are in the top 1% of the most privileged human beings to ever walk this planet. Period.
Mm-hmm.
Period. You're in the top 1% already. You've hit the jackpot.
You've hit
the jackpot. Like you like the opportunities we have. Look at what we're doing right now. This is witchcraft. What are we doing? Like we're speaking in real time, in high definition, across the internet from thousands of miles away from each other. We're having this whole conversation, like, and people can listen to it. I'm like, this is even 15 years ago. If you showed this to someone, they'd be like, "Yo!" Like, imagine showing this to someone in like 1930 or even 1970. People would be like, what are like
literally witchcraft?
They'd run out the room screaming. They'd be like, oh, how's he in the same room? Like, so, we have all of these tools. We live in the least racist, the least sexist, the least homophobic, the least misogynistic, the least discriminatory time period ever.
Yep.
Ever. Does that mean it's perfect? No. But there's no utopia. I'm comparing to history and I'm comparing to the rest of the world. So yeah, sure, there might still be problems and you might still have struggles or whatever, but like think back to, do you have it easier than your parents? Yes. Do you have it easier than your grandparents? Yes. Your grandparents? Yes. By a long way. Lord knows like what my great grandparents had to do to survive. Good grief, man.
Yeah.
So again, I think people need to, again, this is the mindset, because of course you can focus on the negative and you can focus on the problems and you can focus on every disadvantage you have and you can focus on things that happened in history which you didn't live through. You can focus on all of these things, or you can have some perspective and you can be grateful and you can be like, okay, all of that stuff happened, but that's put me in this position now. And you can't change the past. The past is immutable. The past is always the past, never changes, immutable. The future, you got some control of that. So what can you do now that in 10 years time, 20 years time, 30 years time, 50 years time, you're going to be thanking yourself and your children are going to be thanking you and the future generations are going to be thanking you for all those decisions you made and all those things you did, etc. So I think if people like focus on that and they sort of switch their brain to be more forward thinking rather than like constantly, if you're trying to drive a car and you're staring into the rearview mirror, you're going to crash. Right? You need to be focused on the road ahead and steering that wheel. And then you've got the control. You've got the control, all the stuff in the past. It's in the past. You want to study it, learn from it, understand what was good, understand what was bad. But then it's like, okay, let's move on. What's that next thing? What's the next thing for me? What's the next thing for my community? What's the next thing for my family, for my friends? What are the decisions I can make? None of us can control everything, but what are the things that we can do that are going to put us in a better position? If you want to write that book, write that book. You want to make that music, make that music. You want to start that podcast, do it, right? Whatever it is you want to do, you want to go for a job, you want to start a business, whatever, you want to get in shape. No one is going to do it for you. No one's going to do it for you. And also, no one's going to stop you either.
They might think so.
Right. Yeah. You might think so. I tell people nobody is going to oppress you more than you oppress yourself.
Facts.
Yeah.
Well, people say different. If you're black, the white man is oppressing you. You just don't know it yet.
Which white man? Which white man?
The white man.
Where? And that's also the craziest thing as well, is because when people have that mentality, it also stops them from being helped by people who actually would help them. right? This is the crazy thing. I mean, I said it somewhat jokingly at the beginning of the show. I was saying like, God bless all the white people who helped, but I mean that real straight up, like throughout my life, like, white people and black people and just people in general have helped me like with so much stuff, with like everything, and so it's wild to me that people are running around with this mentality of like, okay, like I don't know, what's the white population in the USA, like 60% or so, 65%, something like that. I don't know, say 60%, right? You're running around with the notion that the majority of the country is opposed to you or is your enemy. Like, that's wild.
You can't thrive because in that environment.
No, firstly, it's false. Firstly, it's false. Like, it's very false too, right? It's very false. And then also it's like you're just impeding yourself, and you're burning bridges before you've crossed them, right? It would be like, you get this as well. Some people will do it along the gender lines. Someone will say, like, I don't know, all women are X or all men are Y. And so like you've just cut off like half the population. So half the population, you've just decided that you're not going to allow yourself to be helped by them, to be inspired by them, for them to like help you, like just like that. Okay. Yeah. Good luck being successful.
Yeah.
Right. Good luck just cutting half the population out and saying, okay, well, anyone who fits forget about the fact that it's like straight up sexist or racist or what, whatever the thing may be. But it's also just like, okay, good luck. You want to box and like, you want to have one, you want to, it's like going into a boxing match, you tie one arm behind your back and you like tie your legs together. And then you're like, okay, cool. Like, let's go. It's like, you did that to yourself. I'm here. I got both my arms free. I got my legs free, and let's win, right? Let's win. If you're with me, let's go. Maybe this is a blessing growing up where I did, because from day one, I was surrounded by all sorts of people, different religions, different ethnicities, different skin colors. From day one, there was never a time period in my life where I wasn't exposed to just everybody. And so growing up from the age of like 2, from the age of 3, it was just like, my friends are just my friends. People are just people. I never even had a chance to like get caught in the black, white, brown thing, or like this, or like I didn't even have a chance. It was just like, okay, I'm just here. I like these people. I like you. Right? Like, yeah, we're all here. Let's get on with life. And cool. That's another reason why to me it's extra strange actually even having some of these conversations sometimes, because I'm just like, that's not like, that was never a thing for me. Like it just doesn't it wasn't there.
I think it's cliche as it sounds to say that you don't see color. I literally do not see color. I've never sat there and counted my white to black friend ratio. I never said, oh, I wish I had more black friends or anything like that. It's like, if you have a good personality, me and you vibe well, that's it. I don't look at anything else. So it kind of ties into like this whole talk about representation and diversity and stuff like that. I don't walk into an establishment and say, oh, there's not enough black people here. I don't care. Do you have a good service? Do you have a good product? Then I'll do business with you. And I think that line of thinking, when you're looking at the world through the lens of racism all the time, or color, it limits your ability to actually enjoy life and take full advantage of the things that we have around us. And I don't know, it's weird way to live. I don't know. Very odd.
It is. It's not just negative. It's also very limiting. It's also just very, very limiting in like it automatically limits the people who you can be friends with. It limits the people who you can learn from. It limits the mentors you can have. It limits the people you can be influenced by. And it's like, you're just artificially creating all these limits. And the thing is, as well, is really weird, because anyone who exists in the real world, it's like there's this double think going on, because we all implicitly, from our own experiences, we all know that there are good and bad people of every stripe. We all know that, right? No, none of us are under the delusion that like every black person is like a saint. Like all black people are good and decent. Like, no.
Right.
And they're not all terrible and bad. Same with like any demographic of people, because we interact with other human beings on our lives, right? So it's also why racism itself has always been such a stupid idea, right? Even if you're going back to like centuries ago, it was always a stupid idea because it's like, okay, so because someone looks like this or they're from this place or they have this skin color, you're gonna like make all these assumptions about them and like be horrible to them and like discriminate against them or like it doesn't it never made sense, and it still doesn't make sense because I think human skin is something like I looked this up the other day. I think it's something like oh gosh, I'm gonna Google this. Give me 1 second.
All right, yeah.
0.07 inches. That is how thick the skin is. And you know, if you remove that, we all look like that. You know those like muscle charts you see in like biology or even in the gym or whatever, where you just got like the guy with like, you know, the muscles, and it's what we all look like.
Yeah.
It's what we've all always looked like. Right. And so it's insane that imagine all the racist crap that's ever happened in the world, all these conversations, all this nonsense, discrimination, slavery, all of it was based on that 0.07 inches.
That's crazy. It's true.
Like, that's nuts. Like, it's silly. It's like, what are you doing? Like,
why exactly?
Why would you do that? What does that tell you about someone's brain, about somebody's heart, about somebody's character, about their personality? Like, it tells you nothing. Literally tells you nothing. Right? If you want to go a little bit deeper, okay, cool. You can find out where their ancestors were from.
Okay.
Oop. Okay. You know, they were from another part of the big spinning rock. Cool. Yeah. All right. Oh, so I'm gonna hate you because of that. Like, what? What do you mean? Like, I think if you actually think about racism properly, it's so stupid. Like, it's genuinely so dumb. It would be as ridiculous as, you know, you see somebody who's like brunette, who's got black hair, somebody who's got blonde hair, or someone who's got, and then you like make all these like assumptions about them, or you deny them certain jobs, or you do this. You'd be like, what? Are you insane? Right? Oh, you know, or height. Okay, if you're 5'9" or above, you can do this. If you're under 5'9", this is the law. Like, what? Are you insane? Like, what are you talking about? Like, but it's that. Yeah, that's literally,
it's the same rhetoric, same way of thinking.
It's the same thing.
Very limiting.
But yeah, very limiting, very, very limiting. So yeah, I don't know what else to say.
So this has been an awesome discussion. Before we wrap it up, I want to ask you, because I was when I was searching through some of your past interviews, I saw an interview where the thumbnail said that you are the Jordan Peterson of rap. And I want to close off the show. If you can give me 3 life rules, Zuby life rules.
Oh, wow. I like that. I've never been asked this before. Okay.
That's a good one.
Number 1 is understand how great your potential is, right? Potential is crazy. And none of us are fulfilling our potential currently, and none of us ever will. But what you are capable of is incredible, like mind-blowing. Every single person, we've all been given different gifts, different blessings, different personalities, different opportunities, different life experiences, etc. And you have an ethical duty, you have a moral duty to try to fulfill your potential in this world, not just for yourself, but for your friends, for your family, for your community, for your country, for the world as a whole. If everybody focused on fulfilling their potential, the world would be a much, much, much better place. So that's my first rule. Number 2, I would reiterate something that I said earlier, which is that the past is immutable, right? The past is immutable, and the present and the future, well, we're always living in the now. So actually in the immediate, the present is the only thing you can change immediately, but then that has an impact on the future. So whatever has happened in your own personal past, or in the past, just in history in general, in the history of the UK, the history of the world, it's all immutable. It's all immutable. It's very important to understand it and learn from it, but not to live in it, because then you're just running around looking backwards. And if you're running around looking backwards, you're going to run into a tree. You're going to run into a lamppost. You certainly will not have the brightest future. So focus on the present and the future, rather than always being looking back. I would say that would be number 2. And number 3, I think, would simply be around perseverance. Understand that you can achieve greatness, but you have to you have to persevere. You have to keep going. Oftentimes you can win a race just by being the last person running, just by going. So just always be progressing, always be investing in yourself, always be moving forward in your fitness, in your learning, in your skills, in your knowledge, in your whatever it is you do, just always be moving forwards, always be trying to make progression. And you have to persevere. You've got to keep going, because in everyone's life, there's always going to be times that are difficult. There's going to be times where you want to give up, times you want to quit, where it feels like it's unfair, somebody's attacking you, whatever it is, but you have to just persevere and keep on going. And if you do, then you will always attain some degree of success. How far and how high that success is, that depends on what you're doing and your own personal capabilities, etc. But you'll achieve a degree of success if you really work hard and you just persevere and you just keep on going, whatever it is.
That was beautiful. I like that. I'm a co-signer.
Nice
on
words.
that.
Thank you. It's freestyled.
Dope. Zuby, thank you so much for hanging out with us. This has been an amazing conversation. 2 hours. We've never done this before with another guest. I like it.
That was great.
Awesome. Yeah, no, I enjoyed the conversation. I saw the 1 hour mark. I was like, no, I'm going to keep going.
Thank you. Because we don't, like I said, these types of conversations are so few and in between with just the state of the world. So whenever we can have a nice discussion like this, I'm very appreciative. So thank you.
No doubt. I appreciate you guys.
So before we actually roll out, any other projects you're working on right now?
Yeah, well, I'm going to have my new album, Word of Zuby, coming out in June or July. We just wrapped up the Kickstarter project for it. We reached 75,885 pounds, which I believe is around $105,000 in 30 days. So thank you, Team Zuby. Thank you for that. The new album is going to be coming out in a couple of months. And then in terms of things that are always going on, of course, I have my existing music, which you can find on iTunes, Apple Music, Spotify, YouTube, etc. And I've also got my own podcast, Real Talk with Zuby, which you can check out on all the same platforms. And last thing, I've also got my book, Strong Advice, Zuby's Guide to Fitness for Everybody, which you can find on my website, teamzuby.com. So you can check that out as well.
Right there. See that? Beautiful.
Bam, sign it for me.
Excellent. All right, everyone. Thank you so much for watching another episode of Subtweet This. If you enjoyed this, hit that like and subscribe button, and we will see you in the next one. Bye, everyone.
Who should we interview next on Subtweet This? Tell us in the comments below.